All right, let's dive into a topic that, let's be honest, causes a whole lot of anxiety. We are constantly surrounded by myths about what really matters in the bedroom, but what does the science actually say? Well, as you're about to see, the biological reality is not just fascinating, it's also incredibly reassuring. So let's just get right to it. Does size really matter? I mean, this question is everywhere. It's fueled by culture, the media, and a ton of personal insecurity. But what if we just set all that noise aside for a minute and looked at what the actual data tells us about satisfaction? Okay, check this out, because this is where things get really interesting. A major study found this huge disconnect. While only about half of men, 55%, were actually satisfied with their own size, a whopping 85% of their female partners were perfectly happy. So you gotta ask, right? If most women are satisfied, where is all this anxiety even coming from? Well, you guessed it, it comes from our culture. Pornography and the media have hammered home this myth that bigger is always better. They've created this idea that a man's physical measurements are directly tied to his masculinity, his power, the whole shebang. And this sets a completely unrealistic standard, which leads to something researchers call small penis anxiety, even in guys who are completely, totally average. So, enough with the myths. Let's get real and ground ourselves in some actual, reality. What are the numbers from major scientific studies where we're talking about measurements taken by doctors and nurses, not just guesses? What do they actually tell us the average is? Here it is. This number comes from a massive study. We're talking an analysis of over 15,000 men. That makes it one of the most comprehensive studies ever done. And the global average erect length is 13.12 centimeters, or just a little over 5 inches. That isn't a guess, it's not an estimate, that is the scientific baseline. And what about circumference, or girth? Well, the average there is 11.66 centimeters, which is about 4.5 inches around. The main takeaway from all this data is pretty simple. The vast majority of men fall right within a normal, healthy, and totally typical range. Okay, so let's recap. The data shows most men are average, and the data also shows most women are satisfied. So, what is the real biological key to pleasure? Well, it turns out the answer has less to do with male anatomy and a whole lot more to do with female anatomy. To really get what matters for stimulation, we have to talk about where the feeling actually happens. And it all comes down to something called vaginal nerve density. See, those super sensitive nerve endings, they aren't just spread out evenly. Not at all. In fact, a staggering 90%, let that sink in, 90 of the vagina's sensitive nerve endings are packed into the outer one-third, right near the opening. This means the whole system is basically front-loaded for pleasure. That's where most of the sensation is designed to happen. And this isn't some random accident, it's a brilliant piece of biological design. The inner two-thirds of the vagina has very few nerve endings, and that's absolutely crucial for reducing pain during childbirth. What this also means is that deep penetration that hits the cervix at the very end, well, that can actually be a source of pain, not pleasure. So more length doesn't just fail to add more pleasure, it can literally do the opposite. So, if the deeper parts of the vaginal canal aren't the primary spot for orgasmic pleasure for most women, then what is? To answer that, we need to shift our focus to the one and only organ in the entire human body that is designed exclusively for one thing: pleasure. The part that we see externally is really just the tip of the iceberg. The full clitoris is this amazing, complex organ, about 9 to 11 centimeters long on the inside, with internal roots and bulbs that actually wrap around the vaginal opening. It has over 8,000 nerve endings, so it's really no surprise that about 80% of women need it to be stimulated to have an orgasm. And this is the key. Girth plays a much bigger role here than length because it creates pressure and friction on all those highly sensitive internal parts. And you know what? This biological reality is perfectly reflected when you just ask people what matters most for sexual satisfaction. When researchers survey both men and women, physical measurements consistently end up way down the list. What's at the top? Emotional intimacy and connection. Communication and being attentive, those are consistently ranked as very high. So the ultimate takeaway from all this science is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. Our cultural obsession with size is just a distraction from what truly creates connection and pleasure. Instead of worrying about a physical trait you can't change, the focus should be on things you can control: communication, technique, and emotional intimacy.
Because at the end of the day, the path to true sexual satisfaction isn't measured in inches, but in the quality of the connection we have with our partners.